My wife had an affair with my stepfather to secure the $1 million mansion. What she didn't know was that the mansion belonged to me. I'm in such a humiliating situation that even admitting it feels unbearable. When I say humiliating, I mean a soul-crushing kind of shame. How do I even begin to explain that my wife of 7 years has been cheating on me with my stepfather? Yeah, you heard right, my wife slept with my mother's husband. I'm 38, and I've been married to Saya, also 38, for 7 years. Our relationship was what you'd call normal, ups and downs like any marriage. Most of our arguments came from Saya saying I was too close to my mom. She'd mockingly call me a mama's boy. I'm not going to defend that, especially since my mom passed away 2 years ago. I'm just grateful I had the chance to love her the way she deserved. She raised me as a single mother and gave me more than I could have ever asked for. She remained single until about 10 years ago when she met Andrew. He was in his early 50s and had been divorced for a while before he married my mom. I never really understood what drew her to him after being on her own for so long. Andrew was a non-entity in my life while my mom was alive. I'd visit her twice a week, but my interactions with him never went beyond a polite hello and a forced smile. I never could see him as a father figure, and I never tried to hide that from myself, but I kept it from my mom. I was just happy she had someone to spend her final years with. After she passed, there was no reason for Andrew and me to keep in touch. I hadn't seen him since the funeral, even though he still lived in my mom's house. Andrew didn't really cross my mind again until the day I saw him sitting in a cafe with Saya, his arm around her. It wasn't just a friendly gesture or a comforting touch, it felt off. There was something too intimate in their body language, and it unsettled me. It was strange because neither Saya nor I had ever been close to Andrew. Seeing them together like that, so familiar with each other, sent alarm bells ringing in my head. I had left the office early that day to meet an old friend, and the cafe where I saw them was far from both my office and home. I couldn't focus on my meeting, distracted by what I had just witnessed. My friend kept asking if something was wrong, but I told him it was work-related. On the way home, I couldn't shake the image of them together, so I confronted Saya. I told her I had seen her with Andrew. She went pale and stammered out a response. Oh, yeah, I had lunch with him. We ran into each other, and he suggested we eat together. The way I was staring at her must have given away that I'd seen more than I let on. She quickly added, "He's been really upset since your mom passed." I was just trying to console him. He's so lonely, and I was just being kind. What she didn't know was that I hadn't mentioned seeing them holding hands, or rather, seeing Andrew's arm wrapped around her. Their behavior wasn't that of two grieving people, it was flirtatious. I didn't push her any further that night, but I wasn't convinced. Something was definitely off, and I needed proof before confronting her again. Saya works as a nail artist, which means she has weekdays off while I'm at work. It was never an issue, but lately, she had been too preoccupied, and it was causing problems between us. We started fighting more, and she kept accusing me of being clingy ever since my mom died. She even said I didn't care about her absence when I was busy visiting my mom, but she was wrong. I always made time for her on her days off. It felt like no matter what I did, I couldn't win. Then I saw her with Andrew, and my anger only grew. Thanksgiving rolled around, and Saya suggested inviting Andrew to dinner. I was surprised. She never cared to include him when my mom was alive, but suddenly, she felt sorry for him. He's all alone now, she reasoned. Reluctantly, I agreed. I wanted to see for myself how they acted around each other. During dinner, nothing overtly suspicious happened, but looking back, their behavior wasn't exactly normal either. I could feel the tension between us, though Saya tried her best to make conversation and smooth things over. It was an uncomfortable night, to say the least. I knew I couldn't keep living with this suspicion gnawing at me. I needed concrete evidence, so I came up with a plan. I told Saya I had to leave town for a work trip. That morning, I left the house early, but instead of going away, I went to work as usual. Before leaving, I had planted a GPS tracker in her car. By noon, I saw she had driven to Andrew's house. I wanted to confront them, but I was afraid I'd end up looking foolish if nothing was happening. So, I called my friend Keith and explained the situation. I asked him to go to Andrew's place and see what was going on. Keith agreed, though reluctantly. He was nervous about getting caught, but I reassured him. When he got to Andrew's house, the door was unlocked. Keith went inside and found them. He peeked into the bedroom, and there they were, both of them, naked. In bed together, he quickly apologized and left before they could react. Unfortunately, Keith had the front camera on his phone running instead of the back, so he only recorded his own face. There was no video proof, but I didn't need it anymore. I had my answer. I packed my things and left. Saya knew Keith would tell me the truth. She messaged me asking when I'd be home, but I didn't respond. Yeah, I ghosted her. She's been blowing up my phone with texts and calls, but she thinks I'm out of town for work. That was 4 days ago. I've already contacted a lawyer virtually. I don't want to see her face ever again. I'll serve her with divorce papers and get her out of my house. Update 1. It took 10 days for the lawyer to get the divorce papers ready. CIA refused to sign and wanted to talk. My lawyer suggested we aim for an out-of-court settlement to save time and money. I'm just a regular sales guy with limited funds and time off, so I agreed. When we met, she asked for a private conversation. I didn't want to, but my lawyer encouraged it, advising me not to agree to anything. He set boundaries like no touching, no hugging, and no confessions. Seeing her disgusted me. She tried to hug me, but I pushed her away. She claimed it was all a misunderstanding. After reading enough cheating stories, I knew her excuses were standard. I sarcastically said, "Yeah, you were helping a lonely old man, right?" She admitted what Keith saw was true but claimed they were only cuddling, nothing more. Cuddling. Naked. Then she dropped a bomb. She did it to protect our future. I asked, how the hell does sleeping with my stepdad secure our future? She explained that since my mom left her wealth to Andrew, if he married someone else, that woman would inherit everything, and our family's property would go to someone outside. She thought cozying up to Andrew would secure the mansion for us. I couldn't believe it. So, you slept with my stepdad to become my stepmother and take my mother's wealth? I stormed out. When I told my lawyer what happened, he was shocked and amused, but he also wanted details about my mom's inheritance. My mom had left a huge mansion to me, something CIA had always had her eyes on. After we got married, she kept pushing to move into it, but I refused. It was my mom's house, and I wasn't going to kick her out. CIA wasn't happy and would pick fights about it, so I lied, saying my mom willed the house to Andrew. Little did I know, that lie would lead her to seduce my stepdad. What CIA didn't realize was that I hadn't transferred the house to my name yet. I wanted Andrew to live there without feeling like he was a guest in my house. Plus, the name transfer was expensive, and I didn't have the money at the time. Now, I'm grateful I didn't transfer it because if I had, CIA would have been entitled to half of it in the divorce. CIA kept saying I should reconsider the divorce, claiming she could get Andrew to gift her the house. I laughed and said, "No thanks. Good luck with that mansion." She smirked and said, "You're losing a lot by divorcing me." I just smiled, I don't give a f ****. CIA didn't know the house was already mine, and I'm so relieved she never found out. She dug her own grave by admitting her plan to cozy up to Andrew for the mansion. I saw her leaving court with Andrew, leaning on him for support. Now that the divorce is final, it's time to shatter her little scheme. Update 2. After the divorce was finalized, I texted Andrew the details of CIA's confession. He responded, "You know your mom willed the mansion to you, right?" I told him I knew but hadn't transferred it yet. He told me CIA had been asking questions about his will and inheritance lately, which he found odd because he didn't have much. I wasn't interested in forming any bond with Andrew, so I left it at that. Then CIA called me. Normally, I wouldn't have picked up, but this time I did. She was furious. "Why didn't you tell me your mom willed the house to you? I've been screwing an old man to secure your inheritance, and you let me humiliate myself." I just laughed at her. "Thank you so much, and good luck with your little game," I said and hung up. A few days later, she called again from a different number. Andrew had dumped her. He found out she was with him just for the inheritance, and he called her a greedy ******. She was fuming, still trying to play the innocent victim, claiming she was only helping him cope with loneliness. I sarcastically replied, "Oh yes, you've always been so selfless." She kept trying to spin her story, sometimes begging, sometimes gaslighting me to get back together. She even showed up at my house, my office, and random places I frequented, like my gym. But I ignored her like the stranger she was to me now. Update 3. I thought I was done with her, but 6 months after the divorce, CIA popped up again when I transferred the mansion to my name. God knows why she was so obsessed with the house. The day I started the transfer process, I informed Andrew. He wasn't living there anymore, but he removed his things and gave me control over the security system. It took a few months to finalize the paperwork. Meanwhile, I got the house repainted, the lawn trimmed, and the pool cleaned. I was ready to move on, but CIA couldn't let go. I had been keeping my distance from CIA, and based on our last conversation, I knew that Andrew had broken up with her, so I was taken aback when she showed up at the mansion on one of my cleaning days. I wasn't there, but the cleaning manager called to say a woman was wandering around the house. They tried to stop her, but she insisted she was my wife. Seriously, she was practically feeling the walls and admiring the interiors, which only made them suspect she was trespassing, and she was. I told them to kick her out, explaining I didn't have a wife. They followed my instructions and called me back to confirm she was gone. No surprises here, she showed up at my house next. CIA was crying and wailing about how I had abandoned her despite her pure intentions. I told her she needed therapy and suggested a mental hospital instead of my doorstep. She begged to come inside and talk, but I shut the door in her face. I've also taken out a restraining order against CIA for my mansion property, while the likelihood of her sneaking in or vandalizing it was low since she hadn't shown any violence. I didn't trust her. I had to do this to protect the interests of the new tenants. So far, everything's been smooth, and I hope I won't have to make any more updates on this situation. I want CIA's chapter to end so I can finally move on with my life. Story 2. Hooked up with a random girl on Tinder, turned out to be my professor's wife. I'm just your typical university student, trying to survive finals week. After a stressful day filled with exams and studying for my ancient literature class, I decided to scroll through Tinder to unwind a bit. Little did I know, this decision would lead to more stress than I could ever imagine. I swiped right on a girl who was just a mile away. She was 25, slightly older than me, but she was gorgeous and seemed into me, so I went for it. She invited me over to her apartment, mentioning she had to leave in 20 minutes, so I needed to hurry. We wasted no time, but just 3 minutes in, we heard the front door open. She told me to stop, so I froze, my heart racing. I expected an embarrassing moment, like when my parents caught me with my ex years ago, but nothing could prepare me for what happened next. The ancient literature professor I absolutely despise, who I had been frantically studying for, walked in and froze. He gasped, saw her, and then locked eyes with me. His face turned crimson, and he shouted, "Get the F*** out of my house." I think I lost some hearing from his roar. I quickly threw on my shorts and bolted back to my dorm. Now, as I lie in bed, I can't shake the image of my college professor seeing me naked, raw-dogging his daughter. No less, he already disliked me, and given that he's a tough grader, I can only assume I'm going to bomb the final and tank my GPA. I see him tomorrow at 11 a.m. Wish me luck, I'll update you on how it goes. Short update. I've taken the exam but still don't know what's happening. I'm leaving out personal details because this blew up more than I expected, and I'd rather not turn it into a school-wide scandal. I shuffled into class, praying my life wasn't about to be ruined by my professor. Thankfully, the TA entered the room and announced, "Due to a family emergency, Professor, name, will not be proctoring today's exam. He'll email you your graded exams by the end of Saturday." As she handed out the tests, she gave me a knowing look and chuckled before passing me mine. Great, now the administration probably knows everything. I took the test and actually think I did pretty well. As soon as I stepped out, I checked my email, a habit I can't shake, and saw one from Professor, name. Here's the gist. My name, please meet my wife, myself, and the Dean of Academic Affairs in, room number, in, building, tomorrow at 1 p.m. We'll discuss our situation and how to proceed. Thank you in advance for your understanding and cooperation. Best, Professor, name. I don't even know what to think. I didn't do anything wrong. I have no clue why his wife is involved, but there was verbal and written consent. I've got the Tinder DM history to prove it. Plus, his daughter has an IUD, so there's no chance of pregnancy. My biggest worry is how this will affect my relationships with professors and the administration. I'll update again after the meeting. Edit. After reading the comments, it makes more sense that the girl I hooked up with was indeed his wife. She never mentioned anything about her relationship with him, but I really hope that's not the case. I might have just scared him with the idea of having me as a future son-in-law. Update 1. You all wanted an update, so here it is. Over the past few hours, I've gone from fearing a lawsuit to possibly becoming a campus legend. Unfortunately, a few friends found my Reddit post, and since they know the class and the professor is absent, they've pieced together what happened. So, here's what went down. Right after I posted, I got an email saying the meeting had been rescheduled. We were all supposed to meet a little later in a noise-proof room to keep things quiet. The meeting took place around 2:30, and the professor and the dean of academic affairs sat across from me. As many of you guessed, his wife, the girl I hooked up with, walked in wearing a ring. Thankfully, she and the professor didn't accuse me of anything malicious. The meeting was surprisingly straightforward. 2 other professors will grade our exams instead of professor name, to ensure fairness according to the student handbook. If there are any issues with me as a student, he has to submit all my previous exams and class materials to the administration for review. It's also clear I'll be placed in another professor's class next semester. I know the meeting went as well as it could have, but my situation is still tricky since my friends spread the news. Casual Tinder hookups, what a ride.